Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about The Boys Season 2, Episode 2. It's called Proper Preparation and Planning. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. We have, obviously, Butcher's first real episode, and there's hints of kind of what happened. In fact, if anything, the episode kind of makes it sound like he was barely there. The end of the cliffhanger at the end of Season 1.
He was just gone.
Yeah, it sounds from the way he describes it. It sounds like he got the glimpse that we saw at the end of the season, and then he woke up. We see him waking up in like a quick little flashback of him waking up outside this restaurant and trying to like note down all the details he can remember from where his wife was. Obviously, I had some critiques of the first episode. Honestly, this one felt more as what I'd expect. Out of The Boys. I would say it's one of its best episodes, but it felt like it was, a mid-tier episode of season 1.
It was a solid episode. What I'd expect from an episode 2 of a season from this show.
Yeah, pretty much. Butcher, there's a lot of tension with Huey. Huey doesn't really want to trust Butcher, which leads to sort of a big moment towards the end and a couple of small things along the way. But there is kind of there's some nice stuff in there because they're looking for this super that was smuggled into the country, and Butcher makes a deal with Grace, the person who used to lead the team that we met in season 1, and she's not really happy to see him, but ultimately when she hears some of the details of what's going on, she ends up agreeing to help, and if they get this super, then she'll help, and someone at the CIA will clear all their names, and they can go back to their lives. Mother's Milk can go back to his family, so on and so on. And it's interesting, Huey's reaction to this when he hears this deal from Butcher says, "Well, how can we trust you?" Which is something that no one else ever seems to actually suggest. Is like, should we maybe question what Butcher's telling us at face value? And you can kind of see that he's losing them because obviously they end up tracking it to this place. It's like a costume shop or whatever it is, and Kimiko actually like just rips the head off of a guy from the.
It's brutal and fantastic.
It's kind of wonderforful. It's I forget the name of the group.
Sun something.
Yeah, something the lights of the rising sun or something. I don't know. But it's someone from that group who her brother is a part of, and this turns out to be her brother. This fugitive super who's running around, who has very powerful telekinesis, who can, lift, as we saw in the last episode, building. Yeah, or pull down a building in the case of this one. And there's kind of this moment where she sees him, they're embracing, and the entire time I was expecting like just a gunshot to the head. Like I was expecting just like Billy to just shoot him in the head, like in the middle of and create some tension in a different way. But we see him lining up the shot, and Huey actually sort of like pushes him, and he misses, but her brother kind of reacts and like starts just tearing things down and drops a lot of the lighting fixtures on them and runs. And there's a moment after this, because ultimately that resolves in its own way at the end of the episode, but there's a moment after this where Butcher's like, okay, Hugh, you're not coming with us anymore, you're out, and he's like, everyone else with me, and the others don't follow him, and it becomes this kind of moral debate of, well, she's kind of one of us now. Like, we're not even Mother's Milk, who has the most motivation, the most reason to actually do this.
It's like the equivalent to them. Let's say Kimiko is part of the gang, so to speak. The equivalent of this is one of them threatening to shoot Becca because they think she's a threat.
Yeah,
and obviously he's not going to allow that.
Yeah, I think what was really interesting about this scene is that, I mean, it's nice that they're sticking up for her this way, and they're willing to say, no, we're not going to do this, we're going to try and help her, and we're going to help her brother if he wants that help. And he doesn't, obviously, and that's kind of where things go later on, but I thought it was interesting that Butcher he realizes he's losing them here, and chooses this moment to tell them the truth about what he saw, and it does feel kind of manipulative. And even though it's true what he's saying,
it's a moment of utilizing the honesty in a particular moment, right? Because like I say, everything he says is true.
It's very cynical.
But it's the way he chooses now to go, well, all right, well, this is the lowest point. This is when I need this information.
Yeah, and it explains that there's a kid, and Homelander's, I mean, it's actually Homelander who's keeping her captive, although it may as well be now, given what we see from that side plot.
It wasn't, but it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this kind of convinces them to like, go with them at the very least. Obviously, the brother stuff kind of escalates when it becomes this thing between Kimiko and him anyway, where she's like, no, this team you're working for are evil, they did this to me, they're an awful terrorist group, you can't work for them. But he's like devoted, and it becomes this fight between them.
Basically, yeah, he's of the opinion that, well, hey, America sent in the Supes to kill our village, so, maybe they're right.
Yeah. So it develops into this fight where she tries to lunge at him, but he just like stops her midair with his powers
and throws her into a building.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty good action here. Actually, these snippets we get of these.
Yeah. And honestly, I actually think this dramatic point or dramatic tension is more interesting than the one where it would have been if Butcher had just took the shot. Because that would have been the drama between Butcher and Kimiko. But this here is, I think it's got a lot more. It's more personal for Kimiko here.
I agree. I think I expected that to happen because it was kind of playing to the just what the show has been up until this point, particularly with Butcher and his attitude towards Kimiko. It made sense that might happen. This is far more interesting because it's actually kind of funny where when they roll up and she's actually won the fight, she's like knocked him out. Butcher says, thanks, love. Someone's got their head, screwed on and right, here in the right way. Like, he kind of thanks her for helping when everyone else was kind of hesitant.
Yeah, and to be fair, like, she was defending him in that moment. She ran away with him, thinking, "Hey, this is my brother. This is great." It wasn't until after their conversation where she's like, "Oh, he's maybe too far gone, or at least right now he's." Taking some brainwashing.
But notably, though, before it gets to that point in the conversation, when she's trying to tell him about, the team that she's with and what's been going on, she's actually, even though they had to run away because of the confrontation that just happened, she's still trying to tell him that, no, they'll help us. They'll help you because they helped me. Like, yeah. She's not immediately went, well, I've turned my back on them now because of that one little thing that just happened. She
basically recognized in that moment they wouldn't have understood because they thought, well, we're here for a soup terrorist. And... it was like, no, I've got to get out now, explain it to him, and then I can go back and explain it to them, and under cooler heads, and things will be all right. And I like this, say she's not turning the back on them, because for all intents and purposes, these are a family now, right? As we often talk about in these sorts of shows, and she's not just I'm giving up on them. It's okay. I recognize the situation. We'll deal with this later. Safety first, but it'll be okay.
I think the far more interesting thing that's going on here is obviously Butcher's always been clearly a flawed character, right? There's never been a doubt that he's like this, angry guy who'll do anything to get what he wants. Having someone like Huey, though, stand up to him and say, I don't trust you, even in the small ways that he does in this episode. Some bigger than others, obviously, but the way he keeps questioning now and doesn't just take him at face value, and watching Butcher react to that, and Butcher try to like put on the smile and sort of like act not threatened, and in all these little moments, it's kind of fascinating to sort of. It's almost revealing more of his flaws in the way that he's reacting to this.
It's setting up a future battle for leadership, right? In the sense that obviously Butcher was the leader all of season 1, and Huey was a meek little character who had no idea for most of it. But it seems in the break between seasons, where some time has passed, maybe Huey's been trying, but they all kind of agree, we need Butcher back. It's not working. But then having him back and seeing the problems as well, it's like, well, maybe he's what we need right now, but not long term. I can't see it lasting forever. Yeah,
it's obviously the episode ends with him punching Huey, and basically says, if you ever become between me and my missus again, I'll kill you, right? Which is, you can almost guess the words that are about to come out of his mouth. It's so, and that's not a complaint. It's just true to his character.
Yeah.
But Huey, Mother's Milk looks out the window and that doesn't see the punch, it doesn't seem like, and just says, because he's already standing up by the time he looks out, but he says, hey, you coming? Because Huey's kind of hesitating, and there's this kind of moment where Huey's kind of, the adrenaline's clearly in him, he's like thinking about what he should do. Should he retaliate? Should he do whatever? And he doesn't. He just sort of very quietly gets in the van and they drive off, and it's kind of this moment that the episode ends on. But it really does feel like it's seeding the idea of this building tension between them, that Huey is going to make some kind of case for why Butcher can't be the one, making the calls, and why ultimately, well, yes, it's just trying to find his wife and just try to save her from this, predicament she's now in. That Butcher's making decisions for this regardless of what else it affects, no matter who it affects, no matter what the consequences are.
Yeah, it'll come down to Butcher. The cause for him is too personal, and that's not to say the others don't all have personal reasons. Of course they do.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to it, they'll look at the bigger picture. You assume they'll look at the bigger picture and choose to help.
Mother's Milk does that in this episode, because Butcher flat out says he tries to leverage his own family against him. He says, helping him is more important to you than getting back to your own family. And he says, well, no, of course not. But, Kimiko's one of us, and, I'm not going to do that to her. Like, it can't, So he already makes a choice against his own not selfish, I wouldn't say call it selfish, but his own self-interest because of the moral implications of doing the opposite. And it's something that Butcher just isn't willing to do, and I think it's maybe something the characters, and potentially Butcher having to kind of ultimately like realize and address this, and maybe even change in some way.
Almost to the point where I'd say the rest of the gang are good characters, and by that I mean alignment good, not well written. Butcher, I don't think is a good character in that same regard. I don't think he's a villain. At least not yet. But I think it's all selfish and personal for him at the end of it. There is no bigger picture doing things for the right reasons.
One of the things we said last season, especially when they introduced Grace, and Grace was kind of already over the whole revenge thing, says revenge just consumes you. Don't go down this path. She says something along those lines to Huey, and we talked about that last season. Is that my question now is Butcher going to be someone who ultimately can get through this and redeem himself, or at the very least, change how he operates and see why he's been so, are we going to have that exploration of him, or is he going to be the example of what happens when you can't get over it and the hate does just consume you? And it's more going to be like Huey and the others who show kind of the growth.
What they should be. That would be my assumption. I mean, you could be wrong, but my assumption is, no, Butcher is, I don't want to say irredeemable because he's not a terrible person yet, but he's too far caught up in it, and there is no real growth that can happen for him. And I think that's kind of the point. He'll be the sad old man left behind, set in his ways, and the others will learn.
Yeah, I could see that going that way, but at the same time, I do see the potential power in a moment sometime down the line, not even this season, to be honest, way down the line, where he actually has to make a choice, where he chooses to do the right thing instead of what his vengeance would dictate, and I can see how effective that would be given how he has been up until this point.
It could absolutely be a great moment, and I'm not saying that they won't do that. It's just my gut reaction was that wouldn't happen, but I'd be happy to be wrong if it's a good moment.
Yeah, Starlight stuff. There's a fun montage with her and Stormfront. Annie and Stormfront are doing basically press junkets where they're being asked the same questions over and over again by a bunch of different journalists.
Yeah, they did have Maeve there as well at the very start for the photo shoot. Because it's what was their slogan?
Girls get it done, I think
that was it. Yeah. Because obviously this is 3 out of the 7 are now women, and for the first time ever, and making a big publicity push about that. Yeah,
they've got a big campaign, and they keep asking them, what's girl power? Why are women better than men? Blah blah blah. And we kind of learn more about Stormfront here. We got hints of this last episode, but we really get a sense of her character in this one, where she just sort of goes off script and says, I mean, who cares if you got a dick or a vag? And she just goes on this, and Ashley over by the side of the camera is freaking out at all this stuff she's saying on camera.
Yeah.
But she said, hey, you want to talk about, girl power? How about some pockets? Can we get some pockets? Because I have to have a purse with me just for my phone. I don't have any pockets.
Which I loved that actually became relevant.
Oh yeah, it became a plot thing, for Starlight specifically later, because she actually had to smuggle the what do we call it, the
Compound V
in her boot, and she had to hide it from A-Train, who's got because that's the big surprise here. It's the Jerry Springer thing. Well, surprise for you, he's here. He's up from his coma. It's this sort of thing where he knows what she did, letting Huey go and fighting him. and he's sort of playing cat and mouse with her all episode, and he does have super speed, so he kind of can be anywhere watching at any point, just and it plays with that, but just whooshes into the scene at a couple of key moments.
Yeah, it's he's for most of the episode he's scary in a good way, right? Like he's this threat of like, oh god, what do you do against him?
Yeah, and the payoff to it is ultimately she kind of takes the advice, obviously not in the context that Stormfront meant it, but there's a point in the episode where she goes up to Stormfront and says, hey, I actually kind of appreciate what you said about everything, and, about the commercialization of the girl power stuff, and yada, yada, yada. And she's like, oh, you were on a wire, you try to, catch me out, you some sort of, like devout,
Vault spy, I think she calls it.
And she's like, no, and it was a really frustrating moment, actually, because obviously we know Starlight, we know Annie, we know, like, what she was kind of forced into wearing this outfit, she was forced into doing several things, and, yeah, maybe she's not as strong-willed as Stormfront when it comes to speaking her mind and saying, no, F you, I'm not doing that, but that is, obviously we know her intentions and what she's doing right now.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the reveal of how terrible Stormfront is.
Oh, yeah.
Because obviously she was handpicked, right, by Edgar, who obviously knows what the rest of the team are like. He knows the internal politics of the team and knows their personalities. I feel like she's terrible, right?
Very possibly, but we don't know that for sure yet. But the advice she gives her at one point is like, hey, you have to, you can't lose yourself. You have to, like, be willing to not pretend or play by the rules and just say what you mean because it doesn't matter. And she gives her this whole thing. And basically the advice, which I'm butchering the actual wording of it because I can't remember it, but the advice leads to her kind of standing up to A-Train and basically calling his bluff and saying, well, look, I'm pretty sure you killed your girlfriend, which he did last season. And wouldn't it be a shame, if you're going to take me down, I can just take you down too. So it basically talks him out of doing anything and takes the compound back off of him because he's already snatched it by this point.
Yeah, because, A-Train's like, if you talk, we're both going down, we'll both be dead. And she's like, all right, go on then. Try me.
Yeah. And, it's funny because obviously the plot is so separate from everything else going on with Huey and the gang. I did like the moment where she texts Huey because I'm like, oh yeah, these going to connect this episode. And they don't, but it's just this thing. So yeah, Huey's in this plot. Like, this is all connected
to that. Just keeping them appraised.
Yeah.
It means there's less exposition required when they do meet up.
Yeah. So, no, I thought that stuff was relatively effective. I love the idea that the science department, the pharmaceutical department, do tests on the guy who heals because he's got an eye patch on. And she's like, "What happened to your eye?" And he's like, "Oh, they were testing this thing." Like, oh, okay, they just test shit on him to see if it damages him. And clearly, in this case, it did.
Yeah. Shit job he's got there, isn't it?
Yeah, you can see why they wanted him for. I hope he's well compensated. I don't think so because he's also hooking on the side.
Yeah, not well enough.
Yeah. The fact that he's like basically going to see the motels and letting people chop off his dick for a bit of cash tells me that they're not compensating him
$1,000
enough.
as well, because it was like 400 for
the arm, yeah.
For the arm, and then it was like, I'll let you chop off my dick for an extra $1,000. I'm like, that's relatively speaking in this context. It's like it's not that much, is it?
No.
Like when he's just like, oh, I'll let you do it for that. It's very much like he's not being paid that much, clearly. If he's desperate, he's like, oh, that $1,000, that'll be more than enough.
He has to make it affordable so they'll bite.
Well, that's true. It's true.
Yeah, I mean, because if he said $10,000, like, I mean, so this guy may be able to afford $1,000, but $10,000's like, well, I can't actually just drop $10,000 in something at a whim. Like, that's an expense. I need to think about that and save up.
That is an expense, yeah.
But yeah, if he's got the, I mean, maybe it depends on who he's with. Like, let's say someone who's clearly rich, he'll, it's like for $50,000, yeah. I'll let you cut off.
Maybe he does. Yeah.
He does. He pricing based on the client, basically.
Smart. I don't think this guy's smart enough to do that.
It doesn't seem it, no, admittedly, but yeah. So there you go. There's a little bit of again cat and mouse tension as well because she has to hide the compound and the backpack. What's her face? Stormfront's backpack.
Yeah, this is where the lack of pockets comes in. It looks like she's put in a boot, and then A-Train's like, you just put something in your boot. And he's like, did I? You check for yourself, and of course there's nothing there. And later on, she takes it from Stormfront's bag. where she obviously stashed it in the moment.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of like following the bag and chasing it around a little bit. You can see the little pink case like sticking out of the thing.
Yeah, but it's more just, it was nice how that was set up in the dialogue, in the interview, because it felt like just a, hey, women want pockets too sort of thing, which I get. Pockets are the best, and it just felt like natural dialogue in that, but then for it to actually have an impact on the plot was really smart writing.
Yeah, Maeve, bailed out because of the call she got. It was for her, ex-girlfriend, ended up in the hospital. Her appendix was bursting, and she goes.
Elena, I want to say her name was.
I'll take your word for it. But she goes to see her, and they're kind of bonding. She's she's a little bit apprehensive, but hey, no one else is here. She clearly cares, and it's honestly a sweet enough couple of scenes. But she gets kind of mad when she says, hey, maybe you can take me out to dinner. And obviously the big reason why they ultimately fell apart is because Maeve kept not wanting to be seen in public. And we knew last season it's because Homelander got jealous of anyone who was with Maeve and killed them brutally. But it was always to her like, oh, you're ashamed to be seen with me. Your public image, you can't. Like the company don't want you to be gay in the public image, so you can't be seen with anyone, kind of thing. Like one of those sort of ideas.
But the funniest part is, I bet Vought would love it. In terms of the, in terms of the way, like what Ashley was doing last episode. Yeah. Maybe not at the time, but now, I bet they'd be like, oh yeah, this'll do great for the numbers.
But Maeve makes a choice when she's almost leaving to actually just tell her the truth, which is, she tells a story about she went to like a movie premiere and this guy like made a point of sitting next to her and like just try to chat her up, and nothing actually happened. He was just trying to flirt with her, and from the sounds of it, was never going to be successful. But Homelander got so jealous of this that he like found she found the body.
The next day, the apartment was burnt down, and his head was in a different room to the rest of his body.
Yeah, so it's like, and there's what I liked here is because again, the public don't really know that Homelander's dangerous. They think he's this goody two shoes hero. There's a moment here where the girlfriend's kind of like, who? And she sort of like takes a few seconds to realize that it has to be Homelander because
that's the only point of that story.
Yeah. So it takes her a minute to really process it and sort of get to wait, Homelander did something like that.
So that doesn't sound right.
But speaking of Homelander, he is off to Becca and the kid. Becca is not happy. She tries to call the company when she gets a chance to tell them to like try and get rid of him. She was promised that he wouldn't know about anything, but obviously Homelander found out last season, and they basically say, well, hopefully he'll get bored and leave. That's the response.
Great plan, guys.
Because they have nothing to combat him with.
They can't stop him.
And later on, he reveals that he could hear this conversation with the super hearing.
I like that, during the scene, you get the idea that he could, because he stops and looks up at the camera, like he's looking right at her, and it's like, does he know? And of course he knows, he's Homelander.
Yeah. That stuff was basically that he's frustrated that his kid's not showing his superpowers yet, and that he's been told that he's normal and he's having a normal life. Like, no, we're... Because there's a really great scene, I actually thought, where he's sitting with the kid in bed, and he basically starts kind of talking a bit more like Homelander that we know, in the sense that he starts talking about how, we're better than everyone else, and we can do anything, and that's a great feeling, and now we can share it together. And the kid's clearly gets to a point here where he's weirded out. The kid's actually making... And it makes you worry that, okay, he's all nice with the kid right now, but he was nice with Stillwell until, the day came that he just wasn't, happy with her anymore.
Can we tell about the first thing he did as well when he got to the house? Was he just drank the milk? Homelander.
Uh-huh.
It's obviously because he looks really disappointed by it, because obviously we saw him drinking the breast milk before, and this is just regular milk, and he was just like really disappointed by it. I'm like, that was such a small little thing where he goes in and drinks it.
I don't think we talked about that disgusting scene from last episode where he was sticking his tongue in the breast milk bottle.
No, I don't think we did.
Yeah,
he did do that.
That was a thing, yes.
He has issues. This isn't new.
He has some weird issues with... He's got issues with women, issues with men, issues with parental figures, issue with childlike figures. He's got basically everyone.
I mean, that I did just sum up by saying he's got issues.
Yes. I
actually think the last little bit of this scene is really interesting to me. It's after this conversation in the bedroom where he comes out and talks to Becca, and he actually makes a good point which is weird because obviously this is Homelander being, terrifying evil person, and he's still in that mode. He's not in, public persona.
And it's clear throughout the episode as well, because when he first arrives at the place and he kind of touches Becca's arm, Becca kind of like, her reaction tells you that she's scared of him and she's disgusted with him like touching her. So like,
Yeah.
It's not like she's like all these years been like, oh, I've been in love with Homelander or anything like that.
Yeah, because that was something I know we discussed last season as to whether or not she was raped or if it was Jean, because there was the seed of doubt was planted by Homelander, right?
Yeah, and we still don't know, do we? For sure.
We don't know for sure, but I think the way she reacts in this episode it strongly implies that it was rape, at least to me. She's terrified of him.
Yeah, I would say even more specifically, I would say it's the type of thing where she basically went along with it because she was terrified of him, rather than he like physically forced. Yeah, I mean it's still rape. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say it isn't. It is.
But
it definitely is.
The situation. That was what I would assume would have happened here.
Yeah, forced by fear rather than physical force. That's what.
Yeah. But this final bit at the end, Homelander talks about the kid. It's like, what are you gonna do when he wants to go to a baseball game or a Burger King? I think he says is examples, and he realizes his whole life has been in a prison, a pretty prison, but a prison. He's gonna hate you, and he's not wrong. Like this is how you make a supervillain. I know, like their whole aim right now is do not make another supervillain, do not make another Homelander. But I mean, they might have gone too far in the other direction.
Yeah, I think the important thing here from a plot perspective, though, is that the company basically saying we can't do anything to her gives her a reason to want Butcher and the boys' help. Like the idea that that's actually an avenue. Well, the company can't help me. No one can help me. But then in comes Butcher with his team who take on supers. Like, I feel like
the only hope she's got left.
Yeah, it's the only option. So that's an interesting take. When they cross paths again, if they manage to find her through whatever means, and we'll see. I mean, obviously, he's hoping that Grace will be able to help with that by giving over the. But I don't know if we're going to be handing him over immediately. I've got a feeling we're going to have him trapped in the base for a bit, and then
there'll be some debate as to whether or not they should or not, and who knows how this will come down. Because I imagine Kimiko will want to try and unbrainwash him, and kind of make him see that no, these people are trying to help, and the organization, they are evil. And it's just whether or not that'll work. If it's possible, I don't know if she'll succeed, but I imagine that's the direction it'll go. Yeah.
Then the Deep goes on a vision quest with the mushrooms. I did like that he mentioned that the last time he did mushrooms was at a Goo Goo Dolls concert, and then when he's in the room waiting for the effects to kick in, he's listening to Goo Goo Dolls. I thought that was a nice little touch.
Yeah.
But Patton Oswalt voices his gills.
Love this show.
I have nothing to add. Patton Oswalt voices his gills, basically. That's...
Yeah, and basically it's just trying to make him accept himself. It's like, hey man, these girls, they're part of you. There's nothing wrong with them.
Well, yeah, but more. I think more importantly, is examining why he treats women the way he does. This idea that he's ashamed of himself and he'd rather belittle them before they have a chance to belittle his or laugh at him or anything. Because he says like, oh, he ran away from this incident with this teacher, and he wasn't a kid at the time. He was doing like a superhero thing at the school. This wasn't a story when he was a kid. But he ran away and he says, oh, because she laughed at me, and the girl's like, no, she didn't laugh at you. But he's like, oh, but she would have. So he's even lying to himself. Yeah. So. Yeah, so that's
interesting stuff. Ticking along. I'm interested to see where it's going with not Green Arrow and the not therapist. What their agenda is with him.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but we'll see. Interesting little subplot.
Good episode. Just I remember music choices. There's been some good songs this season so far. As there was in the first season. Someone really likes Billy Joel though, because that's 2 episodes in a row. I'm not entirely sure why, but hey, whatever.
Yeah, but there you go. That's The Boys, episode 2 of season 2. We have one more that's already out, which we'll get to very soon, and then we'll be going to the weekly.
On that, I don't know if you've seen, the show is getting review bombed online on your Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes. People are furious that Amazon had the nerve, the audacity to go back to a weekly release schedule and not binge like is the civilized way in the modern age.
I prefer weekly, so they can suck it.
I mean, I do as well, and I just have I can't get behind this. But there are people like canceling their Amazon subscriptions, review bombing it down to really low scores. Like there are people reviewing it saying, "Oh, I love the show. It would be 5 stars." But because of the release schedule, I can't give it more than 1. I'm like, what is wrong with you people? Have some patience.
I'll get used to it. Anyway, that is the end of episode 2. So let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments. Please do liking super important on YouTube. Helps us out a lot. It's a nice, free and easy way to support us. You can also do so, of course, financially over at patreon.com/MaileFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month. Get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?